Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. You know, a lot of you are interested in men's rights and how to navigate relationships these days, especially when it comes to marriage and all those unspoken expectations, the covert contracts, as some people call them. We found a book that dives right into that. Embrace Your Masculinity, a blueprint for success in the modern world.
It's really fascinating because the book doesn't just focus on today's world. It actually goes way back to ancient times like Rome and Sparta.
Oh wow, okay. Why start there?
Well, it's all about understanding the historical context. See, back then, men's roles were very clearly defined: warriors, protectors, providers. And the values they emphasized were strength, discipline, responsibility. These were societies that existed long before the ideas of feminism or Marxism, which the book later argues have really changed how we see masculinity today.
So it's like setting the stage,
Right.
showing us what masculinity looked like before things got complicated.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just about ancient history. The book also talks about the Middle Ages and the concept of chivalry. We all have this image of knights in shining armor, but the book goes deeper. It explores chivalry's code of conduct, how it shaped ideas about honor, bravery, protecting the weak.
Okay, so we've got gladiators, Spartans, and knights. How does all of this connect to modern relationships and these covert contracts we're talking about?
That's where the book gets really interesting. It argues that understanding this historical backdrop is super important for understanding how those unspoken expectations, covert contracts in relationships may have changed over time.
Feel like there's a but coming.
You got it. The book suggests that the rise of feminism and what it calls cultural Marxism has led to a shift in these dynamics. It claims there's a war on traditional masculinity going on, which is causing a lot of confusion and frustration for men trying to navigate dating and marriage today.
Whoa, okay, hold on a second. Those are some pretty loaded terms. Could you explain that a little more? What does the book mean by cultural Marxism, and how does that tie into the whole covert contract thing in marriage?
Right. Well, it's important to remember we're explaining the book's perspective here, not necessarily agreeing with it. The book uses cultural Marxism to describe what it sees as an attempt to weaken traditional values and social structures, including traditional gender roles.
And how does that affect the covert contract, particularly for guys in the married red pill community who are trying to make sense of their relationship?
The book argues that these changes in ideology have significantly altered relationships. It claims that things that were once considered normal expectations in a marriage, like a clear division of labor or certain assumptions about male and female roles, are now being challenged and renegotiated.
So those unspoken agreements that worked for our parents' generation, maybe they don't work so well anymore.
That's what the book is saying. It suggests that men today are facing a much more uncertain and complicated situation when it comes to relationships. And understanding these historical and ideological shifts can be crucial for figuring out the unspoken rules of the game.
Okay, I'm following you. So we've got this historical context and these ideological forces at play. Where do we go from here?
Well, the book then gets into some fascinating differences in how men and women think and approach problems. It argues that these differences, which it claims are biological, play a huge role in understanding relationship dynamics and those covert contracts.
This is where it gets really interesting. Tell me more about these differences.
The book highlights specific cognitive patterns. For example, it suggests that men tend to be more focused and task-oriented. They're good at concentrating on one thing at a time. It contrasts this with women who it claims are often better at multitasking and juggling multiple things at once.
I see. So how does this relate to the whole covert contract thing and understanding what's happening in a marriage? I can definitely see how this could lead to miscommunications or conflicting expectations.
Exactly. Imagine a husband who's wired for single tasking. He comes home after a long day and needs some time to unwind before doing chores or having deep conversation. But his wife, who's naturally good at multitasking, might be juggling dinner, kids, and housework all at the same time, and she might expect him to jump in and help immediately.
I could see how those different approaches could cause some serious tension, especially if those expectations are never really talked about openly.
Exactly. The book argues that recognizing these inherent cognitive differences can be really helpful for understanding those unspoken agreements, and it can help couples renegotiate them in a way that works for both partners.
Got it. So knowing about these differences is important. But how does the book suggest we actually deal with them in a marriage? Especially for guys who feel like they're always walking on eggshells trying to figure out the covert contract.
That's where the book's insights on power dynamics come into play. It explores how those unspoken agreements often reflect the power structures in relationships and how those structures have been influenced by societal changes.
All right, let's talk about that. How does the book define these power dynamics, and how do they connect to the idea of a covert contract within a marriage? I know a lot of guys in the red pill community feel like the balance of power has shifted dramatically in recent decades, and they're struggling to understand it.
This is where the book gets into some sensitive territory. It uses terms like crazy boss bitches and hysterical women. Now, the language might sound a bit harsh, but remember, we're trying to understand the book's analysis, not necessarily endorse the terms themselves.
I understand it's important to be mindful of the language, but let's focus on the idea. What's the book's take on these power dynamics and how they affect marriage?
The book suggests that these power dynamics are always changing, and that the rise of feminism has significantly impacted the balance in relationships. It argues that men are now navigating a landscape where traditional ideas of male authority and decision-making are being challenged.
So it's like the old rules don't apply anymore, and guys are trying to figure out the new ones.
Exact. And that connects directly to the covert contract. The book argues that these shifts in power dynamics mean the old unspoken agreements about roles and expectations aren't so clear-cut anymore.
This is all starting to make a lot of sense. We've gone from ancient Rome to modern marriage and this idea of a changing power dynamic. But the big question is, what are men supposed to do about it? How can they thrive in this new environment, especially within a marriage?
That's where the book shifts gears and starts talking about strategies for success in the modern world. It's all about how men can adapt, evolve, and ultimately thrive in this new environment.
Yeah, I'm ready for some action. What are some of those strategies?
The book emphasizes self-improvement, developing emotional intelligence, and building a strong masculine identity. It's about recognizing your strengths, understanding your weaknesses, and becoming the best version of yourself.
That sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah.
Can you give me some specific? What are some things guys can actually do?
Sure. The book offers practical advice on things like personal grooming, communication skills, even network. It talks about the importance of mentorship, finding positive male role models, and exploring spirituality.
It's all coming together. We've gone from historical examples of masculinity to this modern day toolkit for men. It's like the book is saying, here's where we came from, here's where we are now, and here's how to navigate it all.
Exactly. And while the book focuses on men's experiences, it's worth noting that many of these principles are valuable for anyone trying to navigate relationships today.
That's a great point. It's all about understanding the unspoken rules and adapting to a world that's constantly changing. But before we get into those specific strategies, let's take a break and we'll come back and explore them in more depth in part 2.
One thing that really struck me is how the book doesn't shy away from the difficulties men face in relationships today. You know those moments when it feels like the covert contract has been broken and those unspoken expectations lead to conflict?
Yeah, I think a lot of guys, especially those in the married red pill community, can relate to that. They're searching for answers, trying to understand what went wrong and how to fix it.
The book takes an empowering approach rather than blaming anyone. It encourages men to take responsibility for their lives and relationships, instead feeling resentful or like a victim.
I like that. So it's not about pointing fingers. It's about taking charge and finding solutions.
Exactly. And the book offers some practical ways to do that. For example, it talks about improving communication skills. It's not just about talking more. It's about learning to communicate effectively, understanding your partner's needs, and expressing your own in a clear and assertive way.
Makes sense. I can see how poor communication could lead to all sorts of misunderstandings and those broken covert contracts. But communication is just one part of it, right? What other advice does the book give?
Another big thing the book emphasizes is personal growth. It encourages men to invest in themselves, both physically and mentally. That could mean going to the gym, learning a new skill, or even exploring their spirituality.
I'm curious about that spirituality aspect. A lot of guys in the red pill community have said they've become disillusioned with traditional religion. How does the book approach spirituality?
The book's view of spirituality is pretty broad. It's not about following a specific religion or set of rules. It's more about connecting with something bigger than yourself, finding a sense of purpose and meaning beyond everyday life.
So it's about finding that inner strength and direction, regardless of your religious beliefs.
Exactly. It could be through meditation, mindfulness, exploring different philosophies, or just spending time in nature. The point is to find what works for you, what helps you feel more at peace and gives you a sense of purpose.
That makes sense. I can see how that inner strength and clarity would be so important for navigating the challenges of relationships these days, especially when those unspoken covert contracts are constantly changing.
Absolutely. The book argues that having a strong sense of self is crucial for healthy relationships. It's about knowing your values, setting boundaries, and not being afraid to express what you need.
That ties right back into the idea of renegotiating the covert contract, right? If you're secure in yourself and you know what you need, you're in a much better position to have those conversations with your partner.
Exactly. It's about moving away from feeling needy or resentful and having those conversations from a place of strength and self-awareness.
This all sounds great, but I know some guys have a hard time putting these ideas into practice. They might feel stuck, unsure of where to even begin. What does the book say for guys who feel lost or overwhelmed?
The book encourages men to start with small, consistent steps. It's not about changing your whole life overnight. It's about setting realistic goals and gradually building momentum.
So start small, focus on progress, not perfection.
Right. And the book also talks about how important it is to find support and guidance along the way. That could mean connecting with other men who are on a similar path, finding a mentor, or even getting professional help if you need it.
That's a good point. It's not about going it alone. It's about finding the right resources and support system to help you through those tough times and reach your goals.
You know, something that really stood out to me was how the book emphasizes rediscovering those classic masculine virtues we talked about before.
You mean the strength, discipline, and responsibility of the gladiators and knights?
Exactly. The book argues that those virtues are still important today, but they need to be applied to the modern world.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Take strength. For the ancients, strength might have been mainly about physical power, but today it's also about mental toughness, emotional intelligence, and having the courage to stand up for what you believe in.
I like that. It's about being strong in every area of your life, not just physically.
Exactly. And discipline isn't just about blindly following orders or sticking to rigid rules. It's about self-control focus and the commitment to pursuing your goals, even when things get difficult.
What about responsibility? How does that apply to today's world?
Responsibility is about taking ownership of your choices, caring for the people you love, and contributing to society in a meaningful way. It's about being a man of your word, someone people can count on.
I think those are qualities that most men want to have, even if they don't always know how to develop them.
Absolutely. And the book shows you how to do just that. It's about embracing those classic virtues, adapting them to today's world, and using them to build a fulfilling life.
This is all really resonating with me, and I bet our listeners are feeling it too. But I'm curious, we've talked a lot about the individual man's journey. How does the book address the bigger picture of society? I mean, we can't just ignore the influence of feminism and these changing power dynamics.
It's a great question, and the book definitely addresses it. It acknowledges that these societal shifts are real and that they've had a major impact on men's lives.
So it's not about pretending those changes didn't happen.
Not at all. The book encourages men to understand these shifts, to analyze them critically, and to find ways to adapt and thrive in this new environment.
So it's like understanding the rules of the game, even if you don't agree with all of them.
Exactly. And it's about finding ways to play the game effectively while staying true to your values. The book argues that men can still achieve success and fulfillment today, but it takes a new approach, a new set of skills, and a willingness to adapt.
This has been an incredibly insightful conversation. We've covered so much from ancient history to modern relationships, from communication to spirituality. It's like we've given our listeners a crash course in what it means to be a man in the world today.
We're just scratching the surface. There's so much more to explore in the book.
That's right. For our listeners who want to dive deeper and discover all the practical advice and wisdom this book has to offer, we'll be sure to share where they can find it at the end of our deep dive.
Absolutely. I think they'll be glad they did.
Yeah, but before we wrap things up, I want to touch on one more important point that the book makes. It's not just about individual success. It's about leaving a positive legacy.
It's a powerful idea, isn't it? It makes us think beyond our own immediate needs and wants and consider the bigger picture. What kind of impact do we want to have on the world? What do we want to leave behind for future generations?
It's almost like a shift in perspective, right? Instead of just focusing on what we can get, it's about what we can give.
Zach, and I think that's a key part of the book's message. It's not about rejecting ambition or success. It's about redefining what those things mean within a truly fulfilling and meaningful life.
It's about finding that balance, right, between reaching your goals and making a positive contribution to the world around you.
You got it. And the book argues that real masculinity isn't about power or dominance. It's about using your strengths and abilities to help others to build something that lasts and to make a real difference.
I think that's a message that a lot of men, especially those in the married red pill community who are searching for answers and a sense of purpose, will find really powerful.
I agree. And I think it's a message that everyone can connect with, regardless of gender or relationship status. It's about finding your place in the world, sharing your unique gifts, and leaving behind something positive.
Well said. Speaking of leaving a legacy, I think this book itself is a perfect example of that. It's filled with insights and wisdom that has the potential to touch so many lives.
Absolutely. And for our listener who's been with us on this journey, eager to explore these ideas further and find out what practical steps they can take, we highly recommend checking out the full book.
That's right. Embrace Your Masculinity. A blueprint for success in the modern world is available on Amazon Kindle and Google Play Books. It's a deep dive into history, psychology, and personal growth, all aimed at helping men thrive in the modern world.
It's a book that can challenge your assumptions, broaden your perspective, and empower you to create a life that's both fulfilling and meaningful.
That's a great way to put it. A reminder that even in a world that can feel complicated and difficult, we all have the ability to make a difference and leave our mark on the world.
And as you start that journey, remember what the book says. Embrace your masculinity, own your strengths, and step into your full potential. The world needs your unique gift.
That's all for this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful, thought-provoking, and maybe even a little bit inspiring. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep. As we wrap up this deep dive, I keep thinking back to that idea of leaving a legacy. It's really made me think about my own life and what I want to be remembered for.
It's a pretty powerful concept, right? It makes you think beyond just your own needs and what you want. And it makes you consider the bigger picture. What mark do you want to leave on the world? What do you want to pass on to the next generation?
It's like a whole different way of looking at things. Instead of focusing on what you can get, it becomes about what you can give.
Exactly. And I think that's a big part of what this book is trying to say. It's not about saying no to ambition or success. It's about redefining what those things mean when you're trying to live a life that's truly fulfilling and meaningful.
It's about finding that sweet spot, right?
Right.
Between achieving your own goals and making a positive impact on the world around you.
You got it. And the book argues that real masculinity isn't about being powerful or dominant. It's about using your strengths and your talents to help others to build something that lasts and to make a real difference.
I think that's something that a lot of men, especially the guys in the married red pill community who are searching for answers and a sense of purpose, will really connect with.
I agree. And it's a message that speaks to everyone, really, regardless of whether you're a man or a woman or what your relationship status is. It's about finding your place in the world, sharing your unique gifts, and leaving the world a little better than you found it.
Well said. Speaking of leaving a legacy, I think this book is a great example of that. It's full of insights and wisdom that could have a real impact on people's lives.
Absolutely. And for our listeners who have been with us on this journey and want to explore these ideas even more and discover the practical steps they can take, I highly recommend checking out the full book.
You got it. Embrace Your Masculinity, a blueprint for success in the modern world. It's available on Amazon, Kindle, and Google Play Books. It takes a deep dive into history, psychology, and personal growth, all with the aim of helping men thrive in today's world.
It's a book that can challenge how you think about things, broaden your horizons, and give you the tools to create a life that's both fulfilling and meaningful.
That's a great way to sum it up.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder that even in a world that can feel confusing and challenging, we all have the power to make a difference and leave a positive mark.
And as you go on that journey, keep in mind what the book says. Embrace your masculinity, own your strength, and step into your full potential. The world needs what you have to offer.
That's all for our deep dive this time. We hope you found it interesting, thought-provoking, and maybe even inspiring. Until we meet again, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.